Welcome back to my channel. This is part 3 of the 8-part Iceberg series that I am doing. If you are new here, I have been doing one part each week of a serial killer and mass murders Iceberg. Go check out 1 and 2 and then I'll meet you back here. If you've been around, let's get started. We will get started with the Honolulu Strangler, also known as the Honolulu Rapist. That is the nickname given to an unidentified serial killer who is credited with killing 5 women in Hawaii from 1985 to 1986. He is the second known serial killer active in the state, after Eugene Barrett, and the only one whose identity remains unknown. The first victim was named Vicky Gail Purdy. She was 25 years old, a military spouse to Gary Purdy, who was an Army helicopter pilot. She had left to go clubbing on May 29, 1985, but failed to meet up with her friends. She was last seen by the taxi driver who drove her to the Shorebird Hotel at 12 a.m., apparently to retrieve her car, which was later found in the hotel parking lot. The next morning, her body was found in an embankment at Keehee Lagoon, wearing her yellow jumpsuit. Her hands were bound behind her back, and she had been raped and strangled. Her husband told police that he suspected her death to be associated with her job, working at a video rental store that also handled adult films, where 2 women were previously stabbed to death 1 year earlier. The second victim was Regina Sakamoto. She was 17 years old. She had missed her bus to school on January 14, 1986, and was last heard from by her boyfriend at 7:15 that morning when she called to tell him she would be late to school. On January 15th, her body was found at Keehee Lagoon, wearing her blue tank top and white sweatshirt, but her lower body was completely unclothed. Her hands bound behind her back. She had been raped and strangled. Sound familiar? She was planning on attending Hawaii Pacific University in the fall. And, well, the second case led police to suspect the same killer as the first because of the same modus operandi. Dr. No. It almost sounds like something out of a horror movie, doesn't it? But no, this is real life. Dr. No is the nickname given to a suspected American serial killer, thought to be responsible for the murders of at least 9 women and girls in Ohio between 1981 and 2004. As victims, he primarily chose sex workers working in parking lots and truck stops located along Interstate 71. There are suspicions that he committed 3 similar killings in New York, Illinois, and Pennsylvania between 1986 and 1988, but that has yet to be confirmed. Now here's some background. Some of the victims were sex workers at the Union 76 truck stop in Austintown, east of Akron and west of Youngstown, which is the largest in Ohio, leading the investigators to suspect that the killer was a truck driver. Most victims were found without underwear and without shoes. The killings began in 1981 when the body of a young woman was found in Miami County, Ohio on April 24th. After a forensic examination, it was determined that the victim had died from strangulation, having received a head injury beforehand. At the time of her discovery, no personal belongings or documents were found, making her identification difficult. She was well groomed and there was no evidence of any sex. Investigators did not categorize her as a prostitute. She was nicknamed Buckskin Girl from tasseled buckskin poncho that she was wearing whenever she was discovered. In 2018, the victim was finally identified as Marcia King. The next victim was 25-year-old Marcia Matthews, who was found beaten but barely alive on June 16, 1985 by a trucker 1 mile away from the Union 76 truck stop. She died 2.5 days later from the traumatic brain injury sustained after beating with a blunt object. On July 20th, 1986, the body of 23-year-old sex worker Shirley Dean Taylor was discovered, who was also beaten and strangled to death. Before her disappearance, she was seen at the Union 76 truck stop, where, according to witness reports, she went to meet a regular client nicknamed Dr. No, whose identity was never established. Her body was discovered a few miles from the place of her disappearance, with, of course, her underwear and her shoes missing. Well, these are all the victims that I'm going to cover for this particular case, but there are plenty more. Charlie Chopoff is a name given to an unidentified American serial killer known to have killed at least 4 children in Manhattan between 1972 and 1973. This assailant is also known to have attempted to murder 1 other child. All the victims of this assailant were male, and the majority of murders committed by this individual involved the or attempted mutilation of those victims. While the case is still considered an open one, Erno Soto was someone who was held as a suspect and actually confessed to one of the murders, but he was considered unfit for trial and sent back to a mental institution. On these, I will not be going into the victims themselves because this is actually pretty brutal and I don't think YouTube would really like that. But if you can handle that kind of thing, you know, mutilation and that stuff, go check it out. This one's pretty serious. Bible John. It sounds like a pretty innocent name, doesn't it? Well, in this case, not so much. Bible John is an unidentified serial killer who is believed to have murdered 3 young women between 1968 and 1969 in Glasgow, Scotland. Bible John's victims were all young brunette women between the ages of 25 and 32. And they had all met him at the Barland Ballroom, a dance hall and music venue in the city. The perpetrator has never been identified, and the case remains both unsolved and one of the most extensive manhunts in Scottish criminal history. The case would prove to be the first time in Scotland in which the Crown Office authorized publication of a composite drawing of an individual suspected of murder. This unidentified serial killer became known as Bible John due to his having repeatedly quoted from the Bible and to have condemned any form of adultery while in the company of his final victim. The known movements and modus operandi of convicted serial killer and rapist Peter Topin gave rise to speculation that he might be Bible John after his conviction for 3 murders in the late 2000s. Police have since eliminated Tobin from their inquiries. The Frog Boys, they were a group of 5 boys who disappeared in Daegu, South Korea on March 26, 1991. The 5 boys were all aged between 9 and 13 years old, disappearing after searching for salamander eggs in the western outskirts of Daegu on a public holiday. Their disappearance received widespread attention and caused a national media frenzy. The president at the time ordered a massive manhunt by the police and military to find them. On September 26, 2002, the remains of the boys were discovered near where they had gone egg searching, with some showing signs of blunt force trauma. The investigation has been inconclusive and theories around their deaths. The case to this day remains unsolved. Jeff Davis 8, sometimes called the Jennings 8, refers to a series of unsolved murders in Jefferson Davis Parish, Louisiana. Between 2005 and 2009, the bodies of 8 women were found in swamps and canals surrounding Jennings, Louisiana. Most of the bodies were found in such a state of decomposition as to make the actual cause of death difficult to determine. Author and investigative reporter Ethan Brown has revealed how police investigations have been plagued by missteps in the sheriff's office, contributing to lost or missing evidence. Brown's work has revealed that there are multiple suspects in the Jeff Davis 8 case, and that therefore it is unlikely that this is a serial killer case. Furthermore, Brown has revealed that law enforcement's own witnesses have named members of local law enforcement as suspects in this crime. The first victim, Loretta Lewis, she was 28 and she was found floating in a river by fishermen on May 20th, 2005. There were many other victims after this as well. Patterson and Brown, which were 2 of the victims, had their throats slit. The other bodies were in too advanced state of a decomposition to determine the cause of death, though asphyxia is a suspected cause of death in these cases. The Servant Girl Annihilator, also known as Austin Axe Murderer and the Midnight Assassin. This was an unidentified American serial killer who preyed upon the city of Austin, Texas, between the years 1884 and 1885. The subsequent originated with the writer O. Henry. The series of 8 axe murders were referred to by contemporary sources as the Servant Girl Murders. The December 26, 1885 issue of the New York Times reported that the murders were committed by some cunning madman who was insane on the subject of killing women. The murders represent an early example of a serial killer operating in the United States, 3 years before the Jack the Ripper murders in Whitechapel. According to author Philip Sugden in The Complete History of Jack the Ripper, the conjecture that the Texas Killer and Jack the Ripper were one and the same man originated in October of 1888, when an editor in the Atlanta Constitution proposed this conjecture following the murders of Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes by Jack the Ripper. So look into it some more. What do you think? Could the Servant Girl Annihilator and Jack the Ripper be the same person? Let me know what you think in the comments. So, as most of you know already, I have a terrible time trying to say some of these names. So, again, here we go. I'm sorry. The February 9th killer is an unidentified suspected murderer, believed to be responsible for the 2006 murder of Sonia Mejia and her unborn baby, and the 2008 murder of Damiana Castillo in Salt Lake County, Utah, United States. The murders were committed on the same day, February 9th, well, hence the name. In 2009, the unsolved murders of Sonia in Taylorsville and Damiana in West Valley City were linked through DNA analysis. The corresponding police departments concurrently released a description of the perpetrator as a Hispanic male in his late teens or early 20s. A 20-man task force was then formed. As of 2011, the case was classified as a cold case. In November of 2018, Salt Lake County District Attorney Sam Gill announced that a suspect was in custody in another jurisdiction and was in the process of being extradited back to Utah to face murder charges. Recently, January 2022, the charging documents were unsealed and revealed the suspect to be 41-year-old Mexico national Juan Arreola Murillo, who had previous convictions for fraud in 2008 and was later deported to his homeland, where he remained until his extradition. Tynong North and Frankston murders refers to the deaths of 6 girls and women who, in a period between May of 1980 and October of 1981, were taken, murdered, and dumped in remote scrub in the Tynong North and Frankston areas, southeast of Melbourne, Australia. Later, the suburb of Frankston came to national attention again as a result of the Frankston serial killings in mid-1993. In 2017, the increased rewards were offered for each of the cold cases. The first known victim in the Frankston murders were Allison Rook. She was 59 years old and disappeared on May 30th, 1980, after experiencing trouble with her car. She had told neighbors that she was taking a bus to Frankston Shopping Center to go grocery shopping and to see a realtor. The buses traveled along the Frankston-Dandenong Road, which was where Rook was waiting when she disappeared. On Saturday, July 5th, 5 weeks later, a man walking his dog found Rook's naked body in a shallow grave, partially hidden by scrubland, on McClellan Drive in Frankston, and a $50,000 reward was soon posted by the police. On Friday, October 9th, 1981, Frankston North resident Joy Summers, 55 years old, heading out for her weekly shopping trip, was waiting for a bus on Frankston-Dandenong Road around 1:20 p.m. when she also vanished. It was the same stretch of road where Rook had been waiting when she disappeared. Summers' naked body was also found in a scrub by a man collecting firewood near the intersection of McClellan Drive and Sky Road, Frankston, 6 weeks later on Sunday, November 22nd. North Tynong murders. The skeletal remains of Bertha Miller, 73, Katherine Headland, 14, and Anne Marie Sargent, 18, were found on December 6, 1980, in a sand quarry by men dumping lamb offal on a secluded bush track leading from Brew Road, Tynong North. Miller was fully clothed, but the younger victims were both naked. Miller, a regular churchgoer, had disappeared on Sunday, August 10th of 1980, on her way to church, while heading to a tram stop in Glen Iris. Headland, born in 1965, an immigrant who had moved to Australia from England in 1966, lived in Berwick when she disappeared on Thursday, August 28th, while walking to a bus stop for the 11:20 a.m. bus to her part-time job at Coles in the Fountain Gate shopping complex. Sargent, unemployed, lived in Cranbourne when she disappeared on October 6 after traveling from her mother's house to a nearby CES office in Dandenong to claim a benefits check. On Thursday, February 3rd, 1983, more human remains were found in Tynong North scrubland by a man who had stopped to repair a tire, and a search of the area revealed concealed bones from a badly decomposed and stripped body. The bones were of Naromo Stevenson, 34, a Thai mother of 2 who had married an Australian farmer in Thailand in 1978, arriving in Australia in August of 1979. They lived together in Deans Marsh. On a visit to Melbourne, Naromo disappeared from their car in the Brunswick around dawn on November 30th, 1980, following an argument with her husband. The Teardrop Rapist is a name given to an unidentified person responsible for 35 on women, including minors, in Los Angeles, California. The assaults began in 1996 and continued through 2012. He is believed to be a Hispanic male with a light complexion and received his nickname from at least one teardrop tattoo under one of his eyes. The perpetrator was thought to have stopped his assaults in 2005, but in November of 2011, a 15-year-old girl was attacked, and DNA evidence was linked to the same person. However, the victim did not see the tattoo that many of the previous victims had, perhaps due to tattoo removal. After an attempted assault on June 15, 2012, police announced plans to canvass the Hispanic neighborhoods of Los Angeles and offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. On July 27 of 2013, the LAPD announced a collaboration with the FBI and increased the reward to $100,000, with $25,000 of that coming from the FBI themselves. On that day, they also came out with a new set of composite sketches. The Sleepy Hollow Killer is the name of an unidentified South African rapist and serial killer. He was thought to be responsible for the rapes and murders of at least 13 women. Most of them were most likely sex workers. His signature move was to strangle his victims using their own panties, a characteristic shared with murders of 3 other sex workers in 2007, who were also considered possible victims of the same person. Well, anyway, I guess that is going to do it for part 3 of this Iceberg series. I will see y'all again next week with part 4. It's Devonna signing off. Good night.